Well, guys, that episode gets added to the list of some of the hardest hours of television I've ever had to watch. That was by far the saddest episode of the Vampire Diaries I have ever seen. But also, one of the best episodes I've ever seen. Hey guys, it's Kevin again. This is my Wreath of Vampire Diaries, Season 6, Episode 14, Stay. And holy shit, this episode was amazing. This episode had everything that I have wanted from the past few episodes. Like, this episode, first of all, had no Kai, which was fine. I didn't have a problem with that. There was no Kai in this episode. No, this episode wasn't even about the central story. It was about emotion and sadness and letting go of things. And that's really what this episode was all about. It was such a well-done meaning. And I love that the show did that because of what was going on. And this episode was supposed to, what I thought this episode was going to focus on was Jeremy leaving, because that's what they made it seem like. And while they focused on Jeremy leaving, it focused so much more on Caroline and her mom and Stefan, and that was the basic thing that we focused on this episode. We did focus on Jeremy a little bit, but not as much as we thought they would have, because that's how they promoted it. But let's just get in this episode. It was by far one of the most heartbreaking episodes, by far the saddest episode of Vampire Diaries. I thought the saddest episode of Vampire Diaries was the Season 5 finale. This was so much sadder because you know what's happened here, and it's just so sad to see what's happened. But let's just get in this episode because it was a real tearjerker. It really was, guys, definitely. And I know some people say, oh, you cry every time somebody dies. I cry when I'm affected, okay, guys? If I cry or I have tears in my eyes, that's because they handle the death well. That's what I'll say about that. That is why it's actually a good thing that you guys see that, because I'm an emotional person. I am, and I know a lot of people say that I just overreact over things, but I didn't overreact over this. I had a real attachment to this character on the Vampire Diaries. But let's just get into this episode. We start in the past, and we're seeing Liz. She's finishing up her work day. She takes a call and heads out to the hospital. It's the night of the Wickery Bridge accident. Elena was the sole survivor. We find out that this is actually when Elena's parents were killed, and Liz is told that both Elena's parents died, and now Liz is packing up her office for the last time. She's looking back at the boxes of files, then opens one up, and she pulls out the file on the accident. And we find out that's kind of an unsolved case here, which is kind of interesting. So, a lot of this episode, as you can tell, a lot of things are changing in this episode. A lot of things are coming to a close. Liz's storyline's coming to a close. Jeremy's storyline's coming to a close. Just a bunch of stuff in this episode is coming to a close. So Elena and Damon, probably the funniest scene in the episode. This scene was absolutely hilarious. I love this. Elena and Damon, I have never loved these two more than I have right now, because honestly, I love Elena and Damon now. I know a lot of people hate Delana and want nothing to do with them, but honestly, this episode might just be their best episode yet because of how funny they were. And I think it's just because it's more human. I mean, remember, guys, they didn't get together through magic or something like that. They got together through genuine human emotion, and they realized that they still love each other. So I love this scene. It was very funny, and they honestly in this scene seemed like parents. They really did. It was very funny, and really makes me wonder if Elaine and Damon ever get married and have children, how they're going to be as parents, which is hilarious. So Elaine and Damon go to see the school principal about letting Jeremy graduate early so he can go to art school. The principal's not sympathetic and turns them down. Damon, and I love that Damon's, is talking about, he talks about Catherine and the vampires, and the principal's like, are you just lying about all this stuff? That was really funny. So Damon asks Elaine if they can do this his way now, and she says it's bad enough that they compel him into art school. And Damon compels the principal to let him graduate early so he can start college. And I love that he just compelled him, because they haven't been using magic, and Damon just compels him. I love that about Damon. That's so funny to see. And at the Mystic Grill, Alaric, Jeremy, and Matt are having farewell drinks for Jeremy's last day in town. They discuss that Tyler is now MIA, but agree it's okay since he's nursing a broken heart, because, he live and everything, the whole thing that's going on. He's really going through a hard time, because they just broke up, and Alaric threatens Jeremy if he gets into trouble in Santa Fe, and Matt is getting call after call, and Jeremy asks why Enzo keeps calling him, and he says he sent Duke to him, and then Sarah comes into the grill, and Sarah says she got a call from the manager to take photos for the restaurant's website, and she asked him to show her around. He goes to give her the tour, and basically I gotta say, in this episode, I saw a lot of chemistry between Matt and Sarah. I think this is the most chemistry we've really seen between them. And I'm not counting the fraud Sarah, because she was the fraud, obviously. The real Sarah I'm talking about. So Damon and Elena come in and slap a graduation cap on Jeremy's head, hand him a diploma. Elena explains that they helped him the process along, and Elena goes to get a drink. Damon's joking, saying they'll all find a way to go on without him. And Damon tells him they also left a going away gift in the cap, and Jeremy says there's a joint in the bagel, and that was really funny to see. Damon says not to let Elena see it, so that was really funny to see. Caroline, in the meantime, Caroline and Stefan, by far, oh my god, this was by far Candace Akula's, that's how you pronounce her name, sorry if I'm not pronouncing it right, but Candace Akula's best performance, and also Paul Wesley's best performance. Their scenes in this episode just felt so real and human. And I know a lot of people don't like Caroline, but here's the thing. It felt so real, and I love that here. I just loved how real it felt. Because Caroline's telling Stefan that it's a good thing that Jeremy's leaving for art school, and Stefan is helping her unload the car, where her mom will be having her hospice experiences, and his phone rings, and she awkwardly digs it out of his pocket. She answers the phone because it's Liz, and she asks her why she's calling Stefan, and Liz asks what they're up to, and Caroline says it's a surprise. She says Stefan is with her because she asked him to look after her, and he's doing what she asked, and Liz says that's not the only reason he's there. Caroline says she'll call in 3 hours for the big reveal, and Damon then finds Liz in her office, and I love the scenes between Damon and Liz in this episode. Also, they felt very real. Everything about this episode just felt real, and I love that, because a lot of times people say the Vampire Diaries is very superficial and doesn't feel real, and it's very overdramatic, but no, everything in this episode just felt real. The conversations felt real, everything, and I love that. So Damon finds Liz in her office, says dying gets her a ticket out of work. She says she has open cases she wants to finish. Damon says he can really help close some. He opens several folders, says those were his, and Liz hands him another and asks about that one. It's the file on the Gilberts, and she says she never pursued it because the time never seemed right. And she says then later she and Damon were friends, and she was worried he may have been part of it. And he promises her that he was not involved. She plays him a call from Elena's mom, Miranda, saying she needed to speak to her urgently. Then 2 hours later, they drove off the bridge for no reason. So Damon says she has a good old whodunit on her hands, and basically this is a case they've never solved. So because she's dying, of course, they need to figure out this case. And I thought that was interesting that they just reopened it. So Elena, sneaking up on Jeremy, tells her to hand it over, but he insists Damon gave it to him, so it's okay. He hands it over, says Alaric left because he didn't want to be spotted since he's supposed to be dead, and she says their lives are weird, and then asks for his lighter, and I love this line. She's like, smoking a joint with my brother would be the most normal thing we've done in years, and I thought that was so funny to see, because honestly, their lives have been pretty fucked up. They really have. I mean, she's lost Damon, she has Damon, they've lost Bonnie, Jeremy died once, but he came back, and things like that, and I thought that was just such a great scene, just a really great scene, because it just shows how great these two are. One of the things I've loved that Jeremy's final episodes have shown is just how good of a relationship him and Elena really have as brother and sister. Really, we haven't gotten to see it a lot, and that's because Jeremy's sidelined a lot. Really, he is. He is not a huge character. In fact, the past 2 seasons, all of his plots have had to do with Bonnie. That's all it's had to do with. And he really hasn't had too much to do. So I like this episode. We finally got stuff to do, and they didn't talk too much about Bonnie because I don't feel that's really a concern of theirs anymore. It's not because Jeremy's leaving, and I like that in the episode he's kind of hesitant about leaving. I'll get to that, but we then get to a scene that's just like, this scene literally made me want Caroline and Stefan to get together. Because Caroline comes out with her child bike to show Stefan, but is distracted by how attractive he looks with his, with his muscles. She thinks he looks very attractive and everything, what he's doing home improvement work on a ladder, and she tells him he doesn't have it to all this, and he says if he has someplace else to be, he can go. He smiles and says he doesn't. This whole scene, they had so much chemistry. Just this scene in general, I'm just like, seriously, just get together already. Literally, they had so much chemistry in this scene. It was so well done. So, Liz tells Damon which drawer to find a bottle of booze, and he tells her that's why she's a terrible sheriff. She says she's a terrible sheriff because she's best friends with the person responsible for half her cases, and she asks why both he and Stefan were in town the night the Gilberts died, and he tells her it was the anniversary of his mother's death. She died of an illness back in the day, and he said, and I like this, because I don't feel he really focused much on, the Salvatore's we focus on their family history. Like, we know some of their family history, but not as in-depth as we go in this episode, which I actually like seeing. So basically, Damon talks about how, she died of an illness back in the day, and he says that day makes him feel odd, and he doesn't like to talk about it. Weird, because that's what's going on with Liz right now. So in many ways, Stefan, the reason he's so close with Caroline right now, and the reason Damon's so close with Liz is because they can kind of relate to what's going on, which I find interesting, and I like that, actually, because it really makes us care more for their characters, and not just, like, a random thing. It's like, yeah, they can actually relate to this, and Stefan knows how to get Caroline through this because they went through this. They've been through a parent with an illness, and they got through it, so can Caroline, and I love seeing that. So he then asked her why the Gilberts were taking Wickery Bridge Road instead of the main route, which is a valid question, and why they had luggage in their car that, they were leaving town, and, that makes a lot of sense. So Jeremy asks Elena if he can have her car, and she says no. They're giggling, and they're high, definitely. They're definitely high at this point. They are as high as a kite in the scene. High as a kite, and she tells him she's the world's worst sister. She says their parents died, then she let him down because she couldn't deal, and Jeremy says they didn't make her a bad sister, and says they went through it together. Damon calls them again, and he asks if she can come to the sheriff's office. She says it's not a good idea to be at the police station since she and Jeremy smoked his going away present, and he says it's important, so spray on some perfume. He's like, spray on some perfume, get some eye drops, and pizza, then come over. And I thought that was really funny. So Enzo shows up after Elena left, and this was the only part of the episode that I thought was kind of pointless. I mean, I understand Enzo's in the show, but honestly, Enzo is only... Here's the thing. This is why this plot's in the show. We need something to do with Enzo. Bingo. That's why it's in the show. It's kind of pointless at this point. I mean, I like it. I do. I like what they're doing. I like that they have something to do with Enzo, and he's not just random background. But... it's just kind of pointless. It really is. I don't see the point of this plot. I really did not see the point of this, and everything else was great. This was the only thing I'm just like, I don't really understand this. So Enzo shows up after Elena left, says he heard Jeremy was leaving town. He reminds Jeremy that he's still unhappy they tried to kill him and failed. And I understand that we had to have some closure for Jeremy, but... there was a point where I thought Enzo was going to kill him, and I would scream if that happened. Like, seriously, if they would have ended this with Jeremy dying, I would have been really pissed, especially because we're focusing on Liz dying, not Jeremy dying. Matt looks through the pics Sarah has taken and then notices one photo of interest, and it's obviously a photo of her, and she says she didn't take that one, and... this whole scene, they had a lot of chemistry. I don't know what it is, though. Enzo's calling Matt, tells him to bring Sarah to a tunnel by the river. Matt asks what he's going to do, and he says he's going to hold her hand and do general introductory behavior. Matt tells him not to threaten his mom again, and then he says he went more local and has Jeremy instead. He's crushing him under his foot and tells Matt to meet him ASAP. And, yeah, so that was just kind of I didn't really care about that. So Stefan asks Caroline where to stash all the hooks she bought, and she directs him to a cellar, but she's freaking out over the books, and it's a funny scene, but at the same time, it's very sad, because all these books that she has, she's like, I forgot all these books, my mom's never going to be able to read all these books again, and I love what Stefan says to her, she's worried that she could have a bad last literary experience. I mean, Caroline is just... she's adorable, first of all. It's one of the things I've always loved about her character. 2, she cares so much about her mom. It shows how much she cares about her mom. She will literally do anything for her mom. I think that's really what this scene was trying to show. Is that Caroline will do anything for her mom. Even if it means doing things that seem stupid, she will do it for her mom. Because that's how much she cares about her. And Stefan tells her that he's read all of them and can take the responsibility for choosing books. And she goes off to open a bottle of booze, and Elena tells Liz she didn't know about the luggage in the trunk of why her parents took that route, and she says she was texting with Bonnie and wasn't paying attention, and Liz says the way this town works, there's something odd about it, then tells Elena sorry for not looking into it sooner, and she says Liz was good to them, but after her parents died and says that it was a lot, and Damon laughs to hear that Liz cooked for them, and Elena says she'll see if Jeremy knows anything. Liz gets a dizzy spell, and Damon stays her this whole time, just like, oh my god, like, this whole episode, you're so worried about Liz, because anything bad could happen to her. Damon's staying her, but she says she's fine, and Matt takes Sarah to a tunnel, and says it's a good place for interesting photos. She snaps some pics as he looks around with concern. She tells him the photos he saw were taken by her roommate for her art final, not by a guy. And Enzo calls Matt and says he's there. Enzo runs Matt down with his car. Sarah's watching in horror. I didn't care about this whole scene. I'm going to be honest. I didn't care at all about the scene because it had nothing to do with the rest of the episode. It felt completely out of place, and I didn't care about any of this. Because we really should have just focused on Caroline's plot here. It didn't bother me because it was so into this episode. It just didn't bother me. It just slowed the episode down. It still was the best episode of the season, without a doubt, but it just slowed the episode down for me. You know, just, that's really my only thing there. So Caroline tells Stefan that her mom is running late trying to solve a bunch of cold cases, and Stefan tells Caroline it doesn't matter what book her mom reads in her final moments. He says life is about the moments that lead up to your final moments, not those final moments, and I love that scene. Caroline says I love that line. Caroline says she just wanted to be perfect, and Stefan holds her hand, says that she likes to be in control, and if she could control death, it's Caroline. And she tells Stefan she's glad her mom asked him to look after her because she doesn't know if she could get through it alone. He says he's not there because Liz asked, but because he's lost his mom too. And that when she told him she hated him, it was the worst thing he ever heard. She told him they both knew she didn't mean it. He steps closer, and finally, I literally was like, yes. I was like, yes, do it, do it, do it. They're like getting closer to each other. And finally, they end up kissing, and then he kisses her more thoroughly, pulls her close, they pause, they're looking at each other, and I love that just no one is saying anything, you know, no one is saying anything, they don't even know what to do, like, they're just awkwardly staring at each other, and I love that, because finally, these two are together. Finally, and she's saying that one of them should say something, and he tells her, go for it. She says not that, and I thought that was really funny, because they don't really know what to say, but they are together now, and I absolutely love, well, I'm assuming they're together now, I think they're together now, and if they are, fantastic, I love it. I mean, a lot of people don't like it, but it just feels so real to me, it feels right, it does. I mean, Elena's with Damon, they're so perfect, and now Caroline's with Stefan, and they are literally perfect together. I don't have any problems with them, they're perfect. So we get more with Matt and Sarah. I don't really want to talk about it, because I don't care about it, I don't really care too much about it, but basically, Elena asks Jeremy what happened when she sees the damage to his face, and he says Enzo's a dick, and I love that he's just like, Enzo's a dick, because he is. Enzo's a dick, and that's the thing that's why I didn't care about, that's why I wasn't upset about the plot, because they literally said that, yeah, that plot was pointless. Jeremy literally just said that, yeah, that was kind of pointless, but you know what, Enzo's a dick, so who cares, and I thought that was really funny. She threatens Enzo, but he says he can fight his own battles. She asks Jeremy what he remembers about the night their parents died, and he says he used to smoke pot in his room, and their mom caught him and threatened to have him arrested. He thinks that's why she called Liz, and she calls Damon, who says that makes sense. He ends the call and tells Liz the message was a joke and was intended to make Jeremy think he was in trouble, and Damon says the luggage was for a surprise at a town trip, and the main road had a tree across it. And she says the roads were slick, and that's why there were no skid marks. She says that's mystery solved, then asks him to call Caroline, asks her to delay the surprise till tomorrow, since she's really not feeling well. So Damon agrees and says he'll go get the car, take her home. Liz stands, takes off the badge, her belt, then lays it down the Gilbert file, clicks off her lamp for the last time. It's such a well-done scene because you're like, you know she's never going to wear that uniform again. She's never going to put on that badge again. That is the last time we are ever going to see her in that uniform. It's such a well-done scene. I mean, just the way they handled it. It feels right. It feels like this is the last time this is going to happen. And she takes one last look at her office, then flicks the overhead light off, heads out, and just so well done the way they did that. You know, she just takes a second and looks at what's happened to her. I really feel like that's what's going on. It's that she was just taking a second. It's like, this is my final time. Gotta take a little while, but I like that. So Damon calls Elena and says Liz is worse, and Jeremy says this is a bad time for him to leave town. And I like that Jeremy feels bad about leaving, because honestly, this is like the worst time for him to leave. And that's because, but the thing is, he has to leave. He really has no choice. She said the better time was 2 years ago, before he died, and all those terrible things, all these other terrible things happened to him. And Lark agrees that Jeremy should go and offer to take him to the airport so Elaine can go see Liz. Because the only reason Jeremy wants to leave is so, you know, he'll stop obsessing over Bonnie and basically just get a life, because that's what Elena wants, is for him to get a life outside of Bonnie. And she tells Jeremy to expect an SUV-sized package from her and tells him not to crash her car. And then we get this scene between Damon and Liz. And this scene, I was like this close to crying, really. I was this close to crying in this scene. Damon's tucking Liz into bed, and I love that he's like, her PJs are sexy. She's laughing and calls that disturbing. She said if there had been a supernatural reason the Gilberts died, at least there would have been a reason. She cried and says it was just a stupid accident. I love that they didn't solve the case. I love that, because there wasn't time to. There simply just was not time to solve the case. She says she did everything she should have. She lived a good life, took care of her family, and he says sometimes bad things happen to really amazing people, and Liz is crying, saying there's some peace in knowing she'll be one of the few people in town to die an ordinary death, and she says she's okay being exceptionally ordinary, but says Caroline was meant to be extraordinary, and she says Caroline needs to know she's proud of her, and Damon says she'll tell her that herself, and he tells her to lay down, tuck the blankets around her. She thanks him for today and for being there with her, and just this whole scene, it was like this close to crying, because this is his best friend. Like, Liz is his best friend, and it's so sad that she's dying, and basically, he holds her hand, says he didn't get the chance to spend much time with his mom before she died. He says he wrote her eulogy, but then didn't get time to go to her funeral, and she tells him he can have a second chance and can write hers, and I love it. She's like, you can write mine, but nothing dirty. I love that. And he smiles, and she asks for a drink, and he goes to get her a drink, and basically he's gonna write her eulogy, and it's such a sad scene, but it's such a satisfying scene as well, because you know it's probably gonna be the last scene between Damon and Liz, and she doesn't answer. He looks back. She's completely out. She's completely out. That is the last scene we have with Liz talking. Really, that's it. And it's basically she is now out, and Caroline's rushing to the hospital. Damon's explaining that she fell asleep and that the doctor said they could make her comfortable. And just this whole scene, Candace Acola in this scene, holy shit, it was so sad to see. She goes into her mom's room and sees that she's utterly still and out of it. And that's why the episode was, basically that's why the episode's called Stay, because Caroline just wants her mom to stay. She's crying, saying she didn't get to say goodbye to her mom. She thinks she's dead. She's not dead yet, though. She's in that state where, like, she's not gonna live, but she's not dead yet. She's just brain dead, basically. She's in a deep sleep, and she's not gonna get out of this. So Caroline feels absolutely horrible. Also, the fact that Caroline, if you remember, increased her death rate, that's why she's so upset about this as well. Because, again, she really feels this is all her fault. And Damon says the doctor said she's stable and it won't be long for now. And he also says Liz set up a DNR. He goes to get some air and leaves Stefan there. And Stefan goes in where Caroline's sitting with her mom. Caroline says she should have been with her. He's trying to comfort her. And she says she was supposed to give her mom peace and thank her for being an amazing mom, but now can't think of the last thing she said to her. She says she was supposed to be with her for her final moment, and he says she still can. And that scene was just so well done, because I love that he's telling her, look, she's not dead. You can still be with her. And Alaric takes Jeremy to a bus stop. He's not going to college. He's going off hunting, and I think it's a good ending for the character, because that's where Jeremy started. He was a vampire hunter. And, he hunted vampires, things like that. So Rick says he needs to produce some artwork to fool Elena. He hands him a bag of hunter gear, gives him a map of an area. He needs to investigate supernatural killings. And what this is making me think is that they're going to bring Jeremy back at some point. It really does. I mean, the guy that plays Jeremy, I don't know his name, but he only said that he never said that this is like a permanent leave. I definitely feel like at some point Jeremy's going to come back. And when he does come back, Elena, it's not going to like what ended up happening to him. Because him hunting, it's not going to end well for him. I know that. I don't know what's going to happen to Jeremy. But it's a very nice, satisfying ending between Alaric and Jeremy. And what I like about that is that after that, the rest of the episode is just Stefan and Caroline. And Stefan tells Caroline to clear her mind, think about her favorite memory of her mom, and just he is being the most supportive boyfriend to her, like, ever. And she's struggling, and he's saying to relax, close her eyes while opening her mind. See, guys, why they're so perfect? Seriously, do you see why they're so perfect? Because he's so calming for her, and he gives her good strategies, and I love that about them. And he says they're going to live in a memory, and Stefan tells her to take her mom's hand. She does, and just the scene that she imagines, this literally, I was crying here. Guys. I could not take it. She's holding her mom's hand. We see her back learning to ride her bike with her mom, telling her just pedal, and it's so sad because, of course, Caroline had that bike, and she said that bike meant a lot to her, and you see why it meant so much for her because of what her mom did for her, and because of her mom, teaching her how to ride a bike. That's something that we never forget. When you're a child, one of the things you never forget is learning how to ride a bike. And Caroline asks for her training wheels, but her mom says she can do it, and she then tells Caroline she won't let go. And Caroline says she's not ready to let go, but she's riding on her home. And it's interesting that she still thinks of this scene because, Caroline doesn't want to let go, but she knows she has to. She has to let go. And it's the same situation when you ride a bike. You don't want to let go, but you have to. And Liz is whispering that she is and watches Caroline ride away unassisted. And it was really cool to see Liz younger and Caroline, at a young age. And what I like is that apparently next week we're getting a lot more of these. Because in the promo they showed more flashbacks. We're going to see more next week, and that's going to be hard to watch. But Elena, Damon, and Matt come into the room for her last moments. Liz's sensors show she's flatlined. Liz has died, and Caroline's calling out for her mom. She starts crying. She tells the others that she's gone. She's bawling. She's holding her mom's hand. This is not a happy death for her at all. And she switches the machine off as it all goes quiet and dark, and that's the end of the episode. And just... oh my god, guys. You have to give applause to this episode. This episode was just amazing. Such a well-done episode. Such a sad episode as well. Everything about this episode, though, again, just felt so real, and I love that. I loved how real it felt. It really just felt all real. And we see next week that this is going to take a real toll on Caroline. This is really going to change up her personality a lot, and I'm very interested in seeing where they're going to go with that, because we saw in promos that Elena's very worried about her. Everyone's very worried about her. The next episode's the funeral, and it looks like it's going to be very, very sad to see. But I love all the closure we got to Liz. We're getting it a lot more next week as well. Damon's eulogy, that I know is going to break my heart. Caroline's flashbacks with her mom are going to be devastating to watch. But they're such well-done scenes at the same time. I just think they're so well done, the way they do them. Because it gives us character development. It makes us realize why they were so close. We already knew why they were so close. First of all, she's the only living member of Caroline's family left. She was the only member left because, of course, her dad died in Season 2. And her mom was with her that whole time. And one of the things I just loved is that they focus mostly on that and not as much on Jeremy. However, if Jeremy does come back in the show, it's going to be very interesting to see how Elena reacts to what Jeremy's actually doing. Because she doesn't know that Jeremy's actually becoming this hunter, and I'm very interested in what's going to happen there. Enzo, Matt, and Sarah, I don't really give a shit about that. I'm going to be honest. I don't care about their relationship, really. Matt and Sarah, I see some chemistry between them, but Enzo, I don't give two shits about. I don't. I think Enzo's just in this show to give him something, and I love in this episode that they're just like, Enzo's a dick, and hopefully next week that we don't have that. I think next week it's just focusing on Caroline, which is great. As far as Caroline and Stefan go, are they officially together? I think at this point, Caroline's going to deny the relationship because she's so heartbroken. I don't think they can be together right now. I don't. I think Caroline needs some time by herself to process this death and just realize the severity of what happened. She knows what happened, but it's definitely going to take a long time for her to grasp this and realize that no, this wasn't all her fault. Because again, all she's doing is blaming herself. And while a lot of people would say, yeah, she's just blaming herself, I don't feel anything, Caroline always does this. She blames herself all the time, and she's such a selfless person. And again, it shows how far she's come. Season 1, she was a total bitch, and now, if you remember in Season 1, she was a legitimately mean person. She was not a nice person. She was rude. She was kind of a bitch. She wasn't even friends with Elena, I think. I think that she... In fact, I recall a scene in Season 1 when she's, asking for them to do a cheer, and Elena's shut up about it. She really was not a nice person. It really just shows her character development, and I love that here. And again, guys, I'm trying not to be a total pussy about this. I'm not being a pussy. I'm not trying to be someone who's just going to cry over a death. But it was extremely effective, and it really did get me. It really does. That's one of the things I love about the Vampire Diaries, is how well they handle emotion, and how well they did that in this episode. They handled everything perfectly in this episode. All the emotional scenes were absolutely fantastic. Even the stuff with Jeremy was great. I love the stuff with Jeremy. The send-off to Jeremy was perfect in this episode. My only thing is, how's Bonnie going to react to this? Because I know we're going to see Bonnie again. They can't just abandon that. We're going to see Bonnie again, definitely. Kai was absent in this episode. I think we're taking a little break from that because we need to. It's been going on for a little too long. I think for a little while, they're taking a break from that storyline, which is fine because I want to focus only on Caroline next week. I don't want to focus on Enzo. I don't want to have some random ass scene like we did tonight with Enzo. That was just weird. I have no idea why we had that, but we did, and all that did was slow down the episode for me. I wasn't even paying attention to those scenes because I didn't care. Everything else I loved about this episode. Other than that, really just out of their random scene, I loved the episode. I loved the references to Jeremy's journey as well. The guy that played Jeremy, again, I don't remember his name, but he gave a very good performance as well. But that's basically for my review. Let me know what you guys saw this episode. Was this a good send-off to Liz? Did they send it off perfectly? I thought they handled everything perfectly. And you know what, guys? This episode really made me fall in love with the show again. It really did. I was starting to lose faith in the show. It was like, I want this show to do what I wanted them to kill off Liz 2 weeks ago, and they didn't. And I thought it was a bad move they did that. I'm like, are they actually going to kill her off? Are they just going to find a way to get her to live? But no, they went through with it. And this is why I love the Vampire Diaries, is when they handle emotional torture and when they emotionally torture the characters, when the characters go through emotion, that's when the Vampire Diaries is at its best. I'm sorry, the supernatural elements are awesome, stuff like that, awesome, but the Vampire Diaries is best when it goes through emotional stuff, because that's when I am the most invested. This was probably the most invested I was since the Season 5 finale. I'm going to be honest, it really was. I'll remember I was definitely invested, but like, first half of the season I was definitely invested, but since the first half of the season I have not been as invested. So, this was the most I was invested since then. Fantastic send-off to Liz, just definitely going to miss her character. See you guys in the next video. Let me know what you guys saw of this episode overall. I'll see you guys in the next video, which will either be for Rain or for a movie review, because if I don't get to review Rain by like 11 o'clock, I'm not going to review it till tomorrow, because the movie I want to review comes out at 11 o'clock, and I'm going to watch it then, because it's my most anticipated movie of this month, and one of my most anticipated movies of the year in general. So you guys will definitely want to stick around for that. Not going to tell you guys what it is, but rip Liz, great character. See you guys in my next video. Okay, bye.